Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 590, Saturday, October 27th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in and good Saturday morning. Well, it's a cool, rainy Saturday morning here in Cincinnati and getting ready to head to work here in a little while, but let's go through the news. What do you say? A bit to talk about, don't you think? Okay, so Cesar Savak has been arrested for mailing 13 suspicious cartoon bombs containing IED devices to political opponents of Trump and Republicans. Savak is 56 years old from Ventura, Florida, a northern suburb of Miami. His fingerprints had been held in the FBI database, and that is what led to his arrest. They found fingerprints on some of the materials. And I think it was specifically a package that was sent to Mad Maxine Waters. And they simply took the fingerprints and matched them up with what they have in the FBI database. And voila! They got their man. The suspect has been charged with 5 federal crimes. He faces up to 48 years in prison. Savak has a long criminal record. He's been arrested at least 10 times, including making a bomb threat to the Florida Power and Light in 2002. So, what to make of all this, huh? Well, like most of you, I smell a rat. I smell a big, fat, stinking rat. Let's go through some of the things just right off the top of my head that I could jot down in about 20 minutes of the problems I have with what we know so far. And there's still much more to learn. We don't know that much. But just with what we've been told so far, let's go through what we've been told and think about these things for just a moment. Well, we are shown a picture of his van, which appears to be like an early 2000 something van, maybe 2002, 3, 4, 5, something like that, with a pretty nice clean white paint job on it, a white van. What's unusual about this white van is it is covered on all the glass, covered with what they're describing as stickers, pro-Republican, pro-Trump, anti-leftist stickers. Wrong. I looked very closely. Those, my friends, are not stickers. They are not stickers. A couple years ago, in the band I was playing in, we have a trailer that we haul our gear in, all of our amps and PA system and stuff like that. We decided to go to a printing company, a place that does decaling, to go get prices on having a couple of 24-inch by 24-inch signs put on either side of the van. And our jaw nearly dropped at the price. $1,500 to have that kind of printing done. These are not stickers. They are wraparounds. You cannot buy these in the store or on the internet, really. Not from just a bumper stickers or any type of stickers. These are, in fact, very expensive types of printing jobs that are done by companies that do signs and various things like that. They're very expensive. Looking at the amount of material he has covering all of his windows, completely covering all of his windows, looking at the quality of those, looking at the types of wraparounds those are, I would say he's probably got somewhere between, conservatively, $2,500, maybe as much as $3,500, maybe more. That's $2,000 to $3,000, maybe more, in printing of these specialty type, not stickers, but I think they call them wraparounds, that are on the windows, all the glass on the van. Several $1,000s worth. Those are not stickers. Not stickers. Thousands of dollars worth of pro-Trump, anti-leftist propaganda covering all of the glass on the vehicle. Wonder where he got the money for that. And it looks pretty new. No fading. He lives in Florida, right? Well, those types of materials bleach pretty badly from the sun, especially when they're sitting there on the glass. You know how hot glass gets in the Florida sun? There should have been some fading unless they were just put on recently. Maybe he just decided a couple of weeks ago to slap several $1,000s worth of screen printing wraparounds on his van using every single square inch of glass available, but putting nothing on the actual painted portions of the van. No cheapy stickers. All professional decal job. That's what you're looking at. Now, in the state of Ohio, and I can assume in the state of Florida, and probably just about every state in the country, you are not allowed to obstruct your vision by covering your rear windows or your front windows, and in some states, even your side windows. In fact, in Ohio, if your window tinting is too dark, they will pull you over and give you a ticket and make you go have that fixed. And when you go to court, they have to have a cop go outside and make sure that you had that tinting reversed or undone. You are not allowed to completely cover all the glass on your vehicle, especially the rear glass or anything that would obstruct in the front view of your windshield. You're not allowed to cover that because you are obstructing your view. This vehicle should have been pulled over the very first time a cop saw it cruising down the road with all of its glass completely covered in high-end detail printing. Thousands of dollars worth of professional printing of printed wraparounds on all the glass. Thousands of dollars. Obstructing his view, making his vehicle illegal. Illegal. He should have been cited and ticketed if that van was ever spotted by a cop. I promise you, he would have been pulled over immediately. You're not allowed to block the rear view of your window, rear window, nor your front window, and in a lot of states, even your side windows. You try that yourself. Go out and buy a bunch of cheapy bumper stickers. Slap them all over every piece of glass on your car, just leaving you enough to see out of your windshield. Cover your entire back window, and watch how fast you get pulled over. It appears that right after he was arrested, his social media apparently was scrubbed. But some people did get some stuff off of his social media, and it was a bunch of typical kind of crazy right-wing crazy stuff. Not the type of stuff you would see a true Trump supporter or a true conservative say. The type of things that you would hear leftists parroting right-wingers or Trump supporters or conservatives say. They tell us he was a registered Republican. Are you aware that Florida is one of the top 3 toughest states on allowing felons to vote? This guy has been arrested 10 times and charged with a couple of felonies. In the state of Florida, to my knowledge, you cannot vote if you are A, incarcerated, B, on parole, C, on probation. He just recently had contact with law enforcement in 2015. He has been on parole. He has been on probation. He's probably still on probation. So why would someone who is not allowed to vote register as a Republican and then get all politically motivated and activated when he can't even vote? Likely. I don't know that for sure. Maybe his probation had just ended and he was allowed to vote. I don't know exactly. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to someone who obviously throughout the last however many years has been either imprisoned, on probation, or on parole, and probably not even allowed or able to vote because of his felony status. Why would someone like that get so wrapped up in politics when they really probably for most of those years, possibly even recently, possibly even right now, is not even eligible to vote? We're now hearing rumors that he supposedly lived in this van, but he apparently has internet and a phone. This van he has also had custom wheels on it. Some pretty nice wheels, not factory wheels on that van. I looked at them. They're not factory. They're custom wheels. And also he had the fender flares. Those are about $350 a piece. So he has like $1,500 worth of fender flares and about $2 or $3 grand worth of custom wheels to go along with this multi-$1,000 decal job done by a professional printing company, not bumper stickers. And of course, it appears he acted alone. Don't they all? Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. James Earl Jones acted alone. They all act alone. Timothy McVeigh, well, no, he had a partner, didn't he? Mr. Nichols. They all seem to act alone, all by themselves. No one knows. No one's aware of what they're doing. They do it all on their own, living out of his van. They say his nationality is white. His name is Cesar Sabbach. He's white. Now he's had on his social media a lot of stuff about the Seminoles. Now, I don't know if that means he's claiming to be part of the Seminoles, that he's like an Indian, or if he's a fan of the Florida Seminoles. I'm not really sure. I'm guessing he's a fan of the Florida Seminoles because he doesn't look like an Indian to me. His name doesn't look Indian. He looks kind of Filipino. Any of you ever been to the Philippines? He looks a lot like individuals I have seen in the Philippines or from the Philippines. He looks Filipino. He looks like a mix Filipino and white, or maybe Filipino, maybe some Latin American or something. But he does not look white. His name doesn't sound white. That's kind of curious. Why did CNN's reporters take pictures of the cartoon bombs before calling the cops? They're also telling us that he lives in a suburb in North Miami, quite the liberal place, and that he was born in the liberal Mecca of New York City. From New York City, a liberal Mecca, now living in a liberal Mecca in North Miami. How long do you think you could drive around with a van covered with all that anti-leftist, pro-Trump material on your vehicle in a place like North Miami, a North Miami suburb, without getting your vehicle vandalized, without getting your tires slashed, your windows broken, and getting your paint job keyed? I would say not long. I would say that vehicle will be vandalized within 1 hour if he was actually driving around in that van in the north suburb of Miami, the liberal Mecca. I guess he somehow grew up there in the liberal Mecca of New York, went down to a liberal Mecca in North Miami, and but he's a hardcore conservative, right? Wrong. Then we have the mysterious packages themselves that were lacking sufficient postage. Didn't have enough postage on them, nor had they been postmarked. Yet they were delivered. How did that happen? Well, most people say, well, I guess he hand-delivered them. He put the stamps on there, but he went actually to CNN and dropped them off at the front desk, and he went to the Clintons and shoved one in their mailbox, and then he went here, and then he went there. Come on now. And then he went out to California and gave one to Mad Max. Yeah, he's crisscrossing the country in the last 5 days, crisscrossing the country from Florida to Los Angeles, California, back to New York, Washington, D.C., in his van, covered with pro-Trump high dollar printed decals, wraparounds, thousands of dollars worth. Yeah, right. I don't think so. So, how did those packages get delivered? Insufficient postage, no postmarks, yet they managed to make it to their point of origin, despite the fact that their point of origin is separated by 5,000 miles from point to point, all in less than a week's time? Not unless he's Superman. Maybe Dale Earnhardt came back from the grave and was driving his van. Now maybe Dale Earnhardt could have made that drive. He probably wouldn't have been able to stop. Probably wouldn't have been able to sleep. He had to drive straight through from Florida to California. Or no, actually, because that came later. He had to drive from... No, the one hit in California was 2 days after. So that means he would have had to have been in New York and Washington, from Florida to New York and Washington. And they have apparently a photograph of him at a kiosk in Florida. Then the next day he's in Washington and New York at Chappaqua at the Clintons. Then the next thing you know, 2 days later he's in California. Then he's back in Florida. I don't think so. I don't think so. Now, if he was driving Herbie the Love Bug, maybe. If he was driving Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, maybe. If he was driving Speed Racer's car, maybe. If he was driving the Back to the Future car, maybe. But he wasn't. He was driving that white van with thousands of dollars of professional decaling, custom wheels, and fender flares, with a cell phone and internet in his van. Yet he has no home. He lives out of his van. Why would a Trump supporter do this? Now, anybody with reasonable intelligence would know that if you start sending this kind of material to people who are adversaries of Trump and the Republicans, it's going to reflect badly on them. Because the media, you are presenting the media with the perfect narrative. The perfect narrative just less than 2 weeks before the midterms. Now the media has a big fat narrative of how Trump and Republicans, some crazy Trump fan, is out there sending death packages to Democrats. That's a hell of a good narrative to be able to play less than 2 weeks before the election, don't you think? And what else did it do? It knocked the salsa invasion story off the front page for a couple days, did it not? It knocked the fallout from the Kavanaugh hearings off the front page, did it not? It knocked other stories about how the Republicans' early voting is outpacing the Democrats, so they hadn't had time to do that story. It also kept MSNBC and NBC from having to report that they knew, based on interviewing a witness about Miss Swetnick, they had her top chief witness that was supposed to vouch for her, who they interviewed, who discredited everything Swetnick said. MSNBC and NBC had that interview before they ran wild with that story, and they never said a word about it. Until now. So this guy, if he was a Trump supporter, he had any intelligence in his head at all, would know that this would be bad for the man he supposedly loves, President Trump, and the party he's really, really happy to be a part of, even though he probably can't vote for them. Is this guy really that stupid? Well, people who they've interviewed said, nah, this guy's not really stupid. I mean, he's not, Mr. Genius, but he's not what we call stupid. They also say they've never even ever really heard him talk much about politics. People who know him say they've never known him to be very politically interested or active at all. All of a sudden now, He's the most hardcore politically active person you'll find on the right. He owns a laundromat and a catering service. Don't know if they make him any money, but he owns them. He's apparently is a bouncer. Claims to be. At some club in Hollywood. Apparently he used to be a stripper. Apparently he was into bodybuilding and did a lot of steroids and got busted actually for selling steroids. There's a lot of problems, my friends, with this story. You know, the CIA and the FBI both have a long history of finding guys just like this. Dead enders. Dead enders. And using them as patsies, setting them up. I just find it hard to believe this guy doesn't fit the profile of a crazy person. He fits the profile of an average guy who's probably never really found his niche. He's bounced around and done a lot of different things, but never really found his niche. Obviously, he's got a bit of a temper. He gets a little frustrated. He had some money issues, filed bankruptcy, and all these things. But all of a sudden, he's this highly charged political actor. And in an effort to help his candidate, he decides to send out death packages of cartoon bombs to people who would be adversaries. And you wouldn't have to be a genius to figure out how that would play in the media narrative 2 weeks before an election. If he wanted to help Trump and help Republicans, he would have sent those things to Republicans and Trump. Then they would have had the narrative. Oh, look what the Democrats are doing. Some crazy Democrat leftist acting on what Hillary said and what Mad Max said and what these other people have said. And they're doing this stuff. That's easy and very logical to figure out. So we have to believe that this guy is a complete idiot. A complete idiot is what we have to believe. If he turns out not to be an idiot, it's going to be hard to believe the narrative. Is it not? Here's what I'm waiting for. I want to see what lawyers or what law firm is going to defend him. This guy ain't got a lot of money. We know that. Doesn't have a lot of money. Either lives out of his van or lives with his mom. We were getting two different stories. Kind of a dead ender. What happens if he has a high-powered law firm represent him? That will be very interesting. I'll be watching very closely to see who it is that defends this guy or becomes his legal defense, his attorneys, the law firm, and the lawyer. Maybe it will be Mr. Elias or Mr. Sussman. We'll continue to watch the story. There's much more to learn here. And yes, I heard Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray's comments that no, this was a real explosive. These were real explosives. No, they weren't. Bullshit. No more than a can of hairspray that's been left in your car when it's 120 degrees could possibly combust. Or a Bic lighter or anything else. Something to clear your drain. These things he was sending out were less combustible, less dangerous than a can of hairspray in a hot car. These things probably couldn't have blown up if you tried to make them blow up. His intent clearly wasn't to do harm. His intent was to provide a media narrative, apparently, for the party opposed to the one he allegedly is promoting. Doesn't add up, does it? Of course not. Let's see who his legal representation is. Then we'll know more. And I expect we'll learn more about this dude. We'll learn more. Probably come out after the midterms. And then he'll disappear. Someday he'll get a court date. And it'll all just kind of go away. But I hope not. I hope some people dig into this, investigate this, and find out more. Because there's a lot more to know about this deal. Regarding the other issue that's been kept off the front page for the last 3 or 4 days as a result of this narrative created by the Trump supporter, the insane, crazed Trump supporter, Mrs. Miggins left a comment in the comment section, which brings up something that has not been talked about much regarding the Salsa invasion, the caravan. Mrs. Miggins pointed out that she believed that there's likely, very likely, drug cartel, South American drug cartel, South American drug cartel cooperation or involvement in the caravan. Very good point, Mrs. Miggins. But I want to drill down on that point just a bit more. We know from recent reports in the past 2, 3, 4 years that these cartels have almost complete control of from the Mexican border to about 35 miles into Mexico. They own that territory, and you do not get in that territory to cross into the United States. Once you get in that 35-mile zone, as you approach the U.S. border, you are now in cartel territory, their territory. And in order to proceed forward, you must pay them. You must pay them a tribute or a ransom, if you're that lucky. Sometimes they just kidnap you and sell you into slavery, or kill you, or force you to carry contraband across the border. But you ain't getting through that 35-mile zone without paying the man. So this is a big part of the story that's not been brought up. For these people to get safe passage within that 35-mile zone to the U.S. border, these cartels likely would have had to have been cooperating, which means they would have had to have been paid. Somebody would have had to have paid these cartels that control that territory. And they probably would have been paid very handsomely for the number of people that are approaching or plan to approach the U.S. border. See, folks, it's not that easy. It's a lot more complicated than what we're being told. So I'm interested to see if they get within 35 miles of the border, what starts happening to them. If they start getting shuttled and transported to the border, we'll know that these cartels have been taken care of. They've been paid. Who would have paid them? We're talking about a lot of money. Lots of money. Big money. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe millions. Very good question, Mrs. Miggins. Ted Cruz is pulling away from Beto O'Rourke. He's currently up by 7, despite the fact that he's been outspent more than 2-1. Well done. We have Papadopoulos telling Fox News that he's now considering withdrawing from his plea agreement. Pops says that he was framed by Western intelligence, including those within the U.S. government. Yep, that's exactly right. Now, whether or not you can withdraw your plea after you've already been sentenced is a little tricky. I'm not sure you can do that. Once you've had the sentencing, I think that would be your last opportunity to pull back on that. But I could be wrong. But if I was Papadopoulos, I'd go ahead and do the 14 days. Because when he goes to get his judgment and his settlement against the government, and he's probably going to have a settlement against the government of the UK and the United States, and possibly Australia, he'll actually get a lot more money if he goes ahead and does the 14 days. George, go ahead and do the 14 days. You'll get a lot more money. Does anybody remember Michael Flynn? Michael Flynn. I remember wondering if he would withdraw his plea because he too was set up by Mr. Halper, the government informant. It's very interesting. The Flynn sentencing was put off 3 times. The last time, the judge had requested to see evidence, including what he believed might be exculpatory evidence against Flynn. And that's the last we heard of things. We were told that the sentencing date had been pushed to after the midterms. And the duration of that period, from the last time we heard that, is when the judge said he wanted to get this exculpatory evidence or information from the case that could be exculpatory, and we haven't heard anything. It's been very, very quiet around Michael Flynn and this judgment and this ruling and what the judge is looking at and the sentencing. It's all been kind of pushed back, and there's just not much talk about Flynn recently. I wonder why. But he too should consider withdrawing his plea. And he too has a pretty good lawsuit against the government when the truth comes out. And after we kick the crap out of the commie-crats in the midterms, we're going to get busy doing that. I'm confident of that. That's why they're so desperate and willing to pull off stunts like the one we were earlier discussing. It's critical mass for the demo commies and their deep state allies. And the shenanigans continue. Whether it's Kavanaugh, the salsa invasion, this so-called right-wing nut with the cartoon bombs. Oh, and they're not done. They've got 11 days, my friends. They'll come up with some more stuff before then, before it's over. Maybe something will stick, huh? You know, I remember... Oh, one other story here. Charles Grassley has now sent a second criminal referral to the Department of Justice on the porn lawyer, the creepy porn lawyer, Avenatti. A second criminal referral. That dude's going to end up in jail. He really is. Avenatti is a guy that, I don't know if he realizes this, his butt's going to end up in jail, and he's going to be massively in debt. His career is on the fast track down the drain. I remember back about 2 or 3 weeks before the 2016 election when all the liberal left-wing news organizations were going crazy with happiness as they reported that early voting showed that Democrats were up 7-8% in early voting. And then they brought on their experts to say, what does this mean? And their experts were saying, oh, well, this just is more evidence that the Right Reverend Clinton is going to win in a historic fashion. It could be the biggest landslide since 1972. It's a huge story. It's a huge, important story, right? Well, now, all of a sudden, here we are a couple weeks out from the election, and we can see that the early registration numbers are out, and we can see that the Republicans are way up, and the Democrats are way down. Yet, are they talking about that being a big factor? Are they bringing on the experts to say what that means? No. No, 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 no. They're saying very little about it. Now, I think ABC or NBC actually did do a brief story saying, hey, Republicans are doing pretty well in early registration. That could mean no blue wave. But for the most part, 90% of these people, MSNBC, CNN, the usual suspects, are staying away from this story, despite the fact it was a huge lead story for an entire 2 or 3 days prior to the 2016, because I remember it very well. But the truth of the matter is, in states that have early voting, we can see that Republicans are up 7% over 2016, and the Democrats are down 5%. That's a 12-point spread. There is a 12-point spread on average of early voting Republicans over Democrats. And that can be a huge factor because we know that Republicans vote in heavier numbers on election day itself. Everything is pointing to a very big night for Republicans on November 6th. Not only is there not being a blue wave, it could be very ugly for the Democrats. That's why I'm staying with my prediction that we pick up 7 seats in the Senate and hold the House with 222 seats. Another thing they talk about, well, you know, this number of Democrats, they're really charged up. Democrats are really showing up in big numbers. They expect big numbers in voter turnout for Democrats. Well, what they can tell you is that Democrats are charged up, but they can't tell you who the Democrats are going to vote for. Trump's support among blacks and Latinos is up by 3 times. It's up 3 times. Looks like to me it's going to be a big night for Trump and the Republicans. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good night. See you.